The Town have a repeat of the greatest day in their recent history on Saturday when they head away to take on Coventry City in the lunchtime kickoff. Alongside me to preview a game that will bring back lots of good memories is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, remember the last time we played this lot?
Let's get down that memory lane, shall we?
Memory lane, and a preview of Saturday will follow straight after this intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast, which is shortlisted for the Best Football League podcast in this year's Football Content Awards. This season, we're sponsored by Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I said before the intro, we will be previewing Coventry City versus Luton Town, and alongside me I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Those of you who have been unable to sell a kidney or remortgage your house to afford a ticket to the game, it will be Sky Sports Plus 12:30 kickoff for this one. It is on television, which is kind of handy because the ticket prices for this one are an absolute bona fide joke. However, when ticket prices were much more steep at Wembley, and we got a brilliant occasion the last time these two met, Jimbo, and it is impossible to go to Coventry on Saturday without remembering the last time these two sides met.
Yeah, it's mad, this run of games, isn't it? The two best games I've seen at the Kenny for a long while in that season, Watford and Sunderland, and then the player final against Coventry rerun, and I hope it's not as nerve-wracking as that day, but I hope it's as joyous at the end of it.
It's the Rob Edwards Greatest Days trilogy in the space of a week, isn't it? I think he mentioned in the pre-match to the Sunderland game how his best games have been the two Watford games and that Sunderland semi-final. And he probably wouldn't have been too disappointed with the atmosphere and everything. For the Sunderland game on Wednesday night, obviously the result didn't go the way we wanted to, but it did at Wembley, and now we come up against Coventry City again, lower than us in the table. They seem to be familiar at doing this, don't they? The season that we met in the playoff final, they started really slowly. They couldn't play home games, could they? Because the Commonwealth Games had knackered up the pitch, and they were down the bottom half of the table for what seemed like an eternity that season. They did the same thing last season, came with a run, but then the sort of run to the FA Cup semi-final kind of got in the way of their league form. And they're doing it again. They haven't started particularly well. I saw snippets of their game against QPR on Tuesday night. They didn't look fantastic in the game. There were parts where they did look okay. But if we go in there thinking that we're playing a side that are a bottom six side in the Championship, we need to give our heads a wobble. They're not. They're just in a massively false league position.
Yeah, I think so. I don't expect that they'll be down there for long. I know that it's similar troubles, really, isn't it? That they're down there where they don't expect to be. People are a bit disgruntled. Well, certainly sort of the weekend disgruntled with Robbins, the manager. And hopefully we turn that corner and they don't, because we don't want to really give them the platform to, be that springboard for the rest of their season. If they're going to do it, they can do it further down the line. But if Luton can go down there and repeat the last two games, which I'm more hopeful of than probably any time ever before, because it used to be one really good performance, one quite knackered performance, and it hasn't been the case this week, then I'm much more confident of a decent outcome.
Yeah, stink the gaff out for another week if you wouldn't mind, lads. I like Coventry. I've nothing against them, of course. I've got a soft spot for them because they were part of the magical day. If they weren't there, it would have been a crap day, wouldn't it, really? At Wembley, I'm not massively a fan of their ticket prices, though. 37 quid for adults, 25 quid for kids. for a TV game as well. That needs looking at and sorting out. But that's not on the fans. That's on the club.
It is, and the coldest and wettest ground I've ever been in. Coventry
You haven't
City.
forgotten, have you?
My God, when you're sat in a stadium that's supposed to have a roof, and yet you're still getting absolutely rained on from above on the coldest day of the year, you don't forget those in a hurry. People think it's glamorous writing about football. It's not. But
you do remember Collins' winning goal, and that's all that matters from that afternoon. We do actually have a decent record there recently, don't we? That's a positive. That's hopefully something that we can continue on Saturday. Has to be said, our away form, take that Sheffield United debacle out of the equation, our performances haven't been too bad. I know the Plymouth loss was terrible, but we had enough chances to win that game. Obviously did win at Millwall. Probably should have won at Preston and had that defensive rearguard at Portsmouth. Away from home, the performances have been a lot better than the results, minus that Sheffield United game. But now we go there, having played our best 2 games of football of the season so far. So if we can make that 3 of that ilk, and this will be tough, right? The turnaround time here is absolutely stupid. Jurgen Klopp always got ridiculed, didn't he, for making this point, but he's absolutely right. We're kind of fortunate that we were at home on Wednesday night. If we were away on Wednesday and then away on Saturday, it would be even worse. But I mean, how the hell are players supposed to recover from, we're asked to put in lots of shifts across the pitch here. However you play your football, at this time of year as well, the pitches are saturated, they're soggy. It is terrible, and it is going to be hard to replicate what we've done of the first 2 games intensity-wise, because they're only human beings. And of course, Coventry have got 24 hours on us recovery-wise. But, we did have 24 hours on Sunderland, so we should balance it out in that regard. But if we can get as close to how we've been in these last 2 games, there's no reason why we can't pick up a result here, particularly if there's no improvement from their side of things.
Yeah, that's it. You've got to take care of your side of the bargain there, and you can't worry about what they are or aren't going to do. We know from experience this season how difficult it is to, reinstill some confidence when it's flagging. It essentially came because of a 2-week break and the fact that you're playing your arch rivals coming up. So, in a sense that they've got some revenge to maybe reenact, that might be what triggers it for them, and you've just got to not allow that to happen. If you play, you're right, you almost think that it's too much to play with that relentlessness, but if they can play with it for a half, and I'm thinking the first half, blitz them and then
hold on for dear life.
Well, no, I don't think they really need to hold on for dear life. Listen, they've given very little chances away to the league leaders. It's unfortunate that they took the 2 that they had, but I'd rather see that than anything that's less wholehearted. But just because I think that's when Luton are at their best, really, and I don't think many teams would be able to live with them. Not least a team that's not very confident at the moment.
Yeah, I think the boys will give everything they've got in this game. It's just a question of how much the petrol tank's got left in it after the 2 insanely intense performances that we've just put in. You say about revenge for Coventry. It'll be interesting to see how much of that there is, because their best players at Wembley aren't there no more.
True.
Victor Gyökeres is off becoming a European star. Gustavo Helmer's obviously at Sheffield United, and a couple of others. Callum O'Hare, who wasn't there at Wembley but was a part of that season, he's left. And as I say, 1 or 2 others, not least Mr. Darboe, who became a Luton hero that afternoon. He's nowhere to be seen either, and I think the goalkeeper's changed as well. So yeah, the players that are left, I mean, obviously Mark Robbins will probably have it within him to get a bit of revenge, because we've denied him the chance to manage in the Premier League, and obviously the supporters will... it'll be an amped up kind of game, although quite how full it'll be at them prices at that time of day with the TV option as well will be interesting. It's never been particularly full at the best of times anyway, has it? So that might dampen down the atmosphere. I think we've had a lot of these 12:30 games now, haven't we, away from home? The Portsmouth game was an exception because that was their first game in the Championship. That was always going to be full and they were always going to be up for it. But even then, the atmosphere was diluted. Millwall, I mean, it was as soft an underbelly of atmosphere you're ever going to get at the New Den for the 12:30 kickoff there. And of course, the Watford games are relevant in terms of that because the derby nature of it was always going to intensify the atmosphere. But generally, what I've noticed in these 12:30 games is what atmosphere there is at games is a lot more diluted because, I mean, ultimately, people haven't been boozing it up since 10 o'clock in the pub, or if they have been, they've only got 2 hours to do it instead of 5.
Yeah, I think what is a positive correlation there is that you'd rather have a 12:30 kickoff away than you
absolutely.
would at home because, yes, I agree with you. The Watford game being the massive exception, that was always going to be, it was always going to go off there, and it did. And away days tend to be more rowdy anyway, aren't they? So whatever the allocation is that you boys are going to go up with, and if Coventry aren't fancying it as much because of the time, the kickoff times, then I think that probably plays into Luton's favour.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great for my body clock, I have to say, getting up at stupid o'clock to go to these games. And even this one's okay, but the next one at Middlesbrough for 12:30, I mean, even the alarm clock's getting scared to be set that day, let alone being turned on. Yeah, you are right. You are right. It doesn't work in the home team's favour at all, and it does work in Luton's favour that all of these 12:30 games that we've got are away from home, and all of the home games that we've got are Friday nights. This works out. All of the home games on Sky, that is, the QPR game that's been, the West Brom game that's on the horizon. That certainly does help us. There's no doubt about that. And the atmospheres in the Championship in particular are key, not so much in the Premier League, because when Luton went away from home, they were dull as anything anyway, the atmospheres. But that's not the case in the Championship, particularly as we're seen as a kind of big team in the Championship, having just come down. Opposition sides see it as a big game, which is why the prices are as stupid as they are, because it's Category A game. I mean, no 12:30 game's Category A game, is it? Least of all one that's on television. But
I find that really interesting because of where Luton have been. The team is seen as a big team, isn't it? But effectively, and maybe people lose sight of this because of getting into the Premier League, but Luton still are a small fish in a big pond, even in the Championship, compared to the size of some of the clubs. Now, that will change in the coming years, obviously, when Luton get to Power Court. But for now, they've punched massively above their weight to get where they were. But the perception is something different, isn't it?
it is, yeah. I mean, it's hashtag teams like Luton are still a thing, but it's not quite what it was 2 years ago, and certainly not last season. That's for sure. Let's quickly touch on some Coventry threats. We're not going to go too much. We're going to try and keep this podcast to a minimum because there's no turnaround time for this. So we don't want you listening for hours and hours and hours on end. One person, though, that seems to go well both last season and this season is Haji Wright, the America international forward player, tends to be on their penalties. He's kind of similar to the Sunderland fellow who scored that second goal on Wednesday night, in that he's got a bit of pace about him. He can carry the ball. He's a good finisher. If there's someone we need to keep quiet, and they've actually got a really, really vibrant forward line, haven't they? Because they signed Thomas Asante from West Brom in the summer. Ellis Sims is there as well, who was actually at Sunderland previously, but been there last season. I mean, ultimately, this is a side that got to the FA Cup semi-final by right hand. We're a dodgy VAR decision away from being in the FA Cup final last season. This is the kind of quality we're going up against here. Haji Wright needs to be stopped.
He does. But yeah, all those three players that you mentioned there, I think, are fairly useful. And they've always been. They were always a tough nut to crack in the previous seasons that we've played them, and even in the playoff final. We had a really fantastic first half, and then they came back into it. So I expect nothing less than that from them, regardless of how their results have gone. And it's just about whether Luton can nullify those players in particular, getting the ball forward to them in the same way that Sunderland's strikers and wing players were an absolute non-entity until those two mistakes gifted them goals. I think it's the blueprint is there. It's been set, as well as the benchmark as to how Luton need to be playing there. And I think it's just a case of going out there and doing the same again. And hopefully the muscle memory of the last 2 games in this week will still be there to flex.
Yeah, that would be handy, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, ultimately, this is a big game, isn't it? They can go above us if they win it, which, is all the motivation that they might need. But at the same time, if we win this game, bearing in mind that it's the first game to kick off, we can kind of move level with Derby ahead of the rest of the weekend going ahead. And Derby are in 12th place. So you think we went into the international break with people babbling that nonsense about being in a relegation battle. All of a sudden, within the space of 7 days of coming out of the international break, we've locked onto the fringes of the top half of the table if we win the game. And whatever happens for the remainder of the results on Saturday, our next 2 games are at home, where you would expect us, with the performances that we've just put in, to pick up points, however many they are. Obviously West Brom were top of the table until Sunderland went above them, and Cardiff have suddenly found some form since they dropped Ethan Horvath, and I'm sure that's purely a coincidence. But there are points to be had. So if we can jumpstart those 2 home games with 3 points here and latch ourselves onto that top half of the table, by the time we go to Middlesbrough, in the game that I'm not looking forward to because it'll be dark on the way there and dark on the way back, we could be in a really, really, really good position going into that next international break, where again we'll have that chance to rest our bodies, get these players back that are not a million miles away but are unlikely to come in anytime soon, just because of the boom, 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 relentless nature of the games. And all of a sudden we can really look forward to the remainder of the season in a positive fashion. But ultimately, if it goes the other way, you're going into those 2 games under pressure of needing to get results to kind of stop sliding back down to where we were in the last international break. It feels like a kind of early pivotal game, really.
I think so, but if you cast your mind back to 3 weeks ago, then if somebody said you'd have a shot at a 6-point week, you'd have bitten their hand off for that, the way that those things were going.
I definitely don't want a 6-game week.
Not a 6-game.
3 games are hard enough.
6-point week. I think it's very, very achievable. They've got to start stringing some results together to take them out of that position where people are even considering a relegation battle, which I still don't think is anywhere near the case. But from the change that's happened since the international break, that's a small thing. And if you can start to be putting these little victories together, I call them, when you take the results out of it, I'm saying, but the little victories of playing better, the harmoniousness of it all suddenly is just clicked in and everything like that. Adebayo getting a goal, these little things. By the way, Alfie Doughty's 1 yellow card away from a suspension, I've heard. So there's those sorts of things I need to manage as well. But even the luck of, but not luck, but finally a bit of relief from the relentlessness of the injury situation, where we thought 4 of them probably weren't going to play, and then 3 of them did against Sunderland. That these little things all sort of add up and get you on a good roll, I think, and then you've just got to go down there and start getting the results to back that up. So, I think a result here begins to put that discussion in the rearview mirror, I think.
I would agree with that. If you're a fan of British cycling, they call it marginal gains, what we've been picking up in the last week, don't they? Doughty was a yellow card away from a suspension on Wednesday night, so I'm mighty glad he stayed on the periphery of all that nonsense at the end rather than getting held deep into it, because we don't want him missing this particular game. He's going to get suspended, isn't he? I think it's something like 19 games before the 5-game thing balances out. If he doesn't get a yellow card in the next 8 games, I would be very, very surprised with the way that teams play wingers in this league. Just kind of got to hope that it's not a massively important game that he misses, like a Leeds away or something like that, where you really need him. Or if he can wait until Amari Bell's back or something along those lines, then that would be that would be handy. Yeah, I'm with you. When we come out of the international break, or sorry, when we went into the international break and we were looking back on that Sheffield United game, we were both saying performances don't matter. we just need to get some results to just stop the rot. And if we had to get a couple of 0-0 draws, we'd have been absolutely fine with that. Now, what we've had in the last 2 games, I think we're now of the sort of point where that performance level is what we're looking for, because we know that that performance level has got the results attached to it, not every week, but a hell of a lot more than not. So that's the thing we're looking at now, not results. Of course, we want the result, but the overriding thing that I'm looking for on Saturday is that performance level again, because I know if that performance level comes for the next 35 games, Luton are going to win somewhere in the vicinity of 20 of them.
And actually, that's a remarkable thing in itself, really, because I thought going into that international break, in the absolutely terrible way they'd lost that game at Sheffield United, I just thought that felt at the time a long, long way off. And so actually, it's almost touch some wood here, like a minor miracle that it's got to this stage so quickly, because I thought it was a long road back to that point. Now that the benchmark has been found, the re-emergence of the old Luton, if you like, but with some new twists, and it's happened in 2 games and an international break. I think that's a real positive going into this, and you're right, if they can match it, even 10% less of what they showed on Sunderland, then Coventry are going to have a handful there.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And that's all you can ask. I mean, look, I never go away from home where I wouldn't be happy with a point. And to an extent, I would be. I mean, if you going into that international break, if you'd said we were going to get 4 points from the first 3 games after the international break, I'd been, no problem whatsoever with that. I'd be absolutely fine.
And we saw this run of fixtures as like, well, this is really starting to get really harder, because before that, until you got to the Sheffield United one, obviously, but before that we thought it was a nice favourable run of games, ballsed it up royally, and you're thinking, well, this is not going to get any better because it actually gets harder fixture-wise. I think that it's a really positive turnaround that we've got to this stage, and it's just about going to Coventry now and piling the pressure onto them, what they're feeling, because that's they're probably not in that place at the moment. But I don't think for any second that they will remain there for the rest of the season. It's just don't be the team that gives them the leg up.
Indeed, yeah. If Coventry aren't a top half side in May, well, I would be absolutely amazed. There's so much quality there, it's untrue. Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Coventry on Saturday. If you said that to me in the international break, I'd have thought, no, I'll be fearing it.
That's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just that those 2 games and the way it's turned really quite dramatically, it puts a pep in your step, doesn't it? You want to go there now, whereas before, if you had to travel, down the road to Dunstable, it would have felt like a slog. You know what I mean? But now, not so much.
Coming away from Sheffield, I'd have been quite happy if there wasn't another game of football again. Now I want them like they are coming. Boom. Obviously, I understand the issues that the players have with recovery, but I want the next game on the horizon because I want to see this progression that this team's doing. And yeah, thankfully we've got it. Team news wise, well, we're recording this before Rob's pre-match press conference. You are about to hear snippets from Rob's pre-match press conference because the turnaround has been such that we've been able to have the press conference before we've been able to get this out to you. So a lot of what James and I are about to say might be nonsense once we hear from Rob. But, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. But surely the only personnel available are the ones that were available on Wednesday night. If you're not available Wednesday night, it's highly unlikely you're going to be available for a significant role on Saturday lunchtime, with the obvious exception, of course, that Liam Walsh is back. And let's hope if he's involved for a lot more than 32 seconds.
Yeah, Liam Walsh is back. That's a positive. And obviously, Campbell wasn't utilised at all. But we heard in the build-up, if you'd have gone to Lutonian.com, I did a piece about Nakamba and how Edwards has said, for now, at least, he can't play 90 minutes in a week, which is understandable. And they reckon, maybe when they build him up, but it'll take a while, that might change. But for now, they're going to have to manage him. So he didn't play, so there's a shout there for him to come in. I almost don't think he's needed for this away game. But obviously, anytime Marvellous wants to come in and play, I'll be happy to see him because he's quality. Walsh has got something to prove, and maybe it's a tricky one because maybe you'd say he could replace Jordan Clark, but suddenly Jordan Clark's found some form just at the same time as the rest of the team have. So I think he might have to bide his time a bit on the bench, and I think that would be the only sort of potential changes there, really, because there weren't, for once, we didn't see a game where people were dropping like flies or having to get the trainers on or the physios on.
That worries me. That might mean that they did all drop like flies, but they managed to go through the end of it. No, you're right. I don't think Walsh starts this game, but I'll be absolutely amazed if he doesn't come off the bench, just purely on freshness grounds. He ain't played for 3 weeks. He's fresh as a daisy. And as I say, let's hope that his appearance lasts a lot longer than 30 seconds, unless, of course, he comes on in injury time, and then it can last 30 seconds just to see the game out. I think we're unchanged here. No reason to change it, unless, of course, there was an injury that wasn't diagnosed or picked up by anyone. But Rob seemed he generally, when he gets injuries, he acknowledges them, doesn't he? And he didn't do that. And I know the attention was on the game itself. I didn't see anything. Maybe Hashi limped off, but I think that's more the fact that he's played twice in 3 or 4 days, having not played for 3 or 4 months. But he's got no choice but to play unless, we've got a defender back, but there's no sign of that on the horizon. There's just no need to change it. The performance was really, really good. And I know it's not a winning side, but you could kind of be forgiven for thinking it was a winning side.
Well, it felt like it wasn't a win, and it should have got something. To come away with nothing is entirely baffling. But considering the 9 games before it, and the question mark over whether they could replicate what happened against Watford, I think everybody was quite positive about it. And I think it would be the same lineup. Because I think, we did in the previous podcast say at times, I think Elijah maybe looked a bit leggy, and that's understandable, the shift he put in, but he took him off at a reasonable amount of time and got Brown on, who had a very good game as well, as a substitute. So the impact of the subs is still there. And don't forget, he's having to be built back up as well, albeit he scored that goal against Watford. But if you've got Jacob Brown as an impact player off the bench for the last half an hour, that's a good thing.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Here you could legitimately have Jacob Brown, Marvellous Nakamba, Liam Walsh, Pelly-Ruddock and Panzu, and, either Zach Nelson or Corley Woodrow. Or, if we go down that route, Joe Taylor as well. That's 7. That's you can only use 5, and that's a good core of 7 there. It's not like we're back in the Premier League days where we're raiding Cardinal Newman's school for anyone who can come and sit on the bench. That's not the case. So things are starting to pick up, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch. And as we go along and get towards that next international break, and, hopefully players come back, and it'd be nice if the rain stops, because I am convinced that these soft pitches, we had this issue with Osho last season, didn't we, which Rob alluded to. It'd be so nice if we can start getting on some proper pitches again and get some players back, because I think that is why they're a little bit concerned, isn't it? Because one slip and a muscle goes and you're out for 3 or 4 weeks, which I suspect is why people aren't training. It's not that they can't train, it's that they don't want that situation to happen. And well, we might need to move. We might need to spend the international break in Dubai or somewhere that's got some sunshine or something, because there doesn't appear to be any of it in England at the minute.
We go to Dubai.
We'll go. Yeah, we'll try and get the podcast to fund it. Let's hear from Rob. Here is the official details of all the team news as picked up by James when he went along to the press conference.
In the future,
both of us won't be necessarily in the position in the league that we want to be in, but it is what it is, and it's still early in the season and early enough in the season to be able to turn that around. And I think our form in recent games is indicates to me that we're going to do that. And in terms of Coventry, brings back some special memories. But Mark, over the period of time that he's been there, he's done an incredible job at that football club. I think he's the best manager in this league. And if there's anyone capable of, turning around their sort of sticky situation and start at the moment, it is him. And he doesn't need me to tell him that. He knows exactly what to do. Look, we lost the game the other night, but we completely dominated it. And we're coming off a few days ago really convincing win against Watford, in a big game of the season. So the way I see it now, I think we're in good form. And there's a real positive energy around the place at the moment. So we're really looking forward to the game. In fact, with the last two performances have been our two best of the season so far. I think I've talked about that openly to over this last week about simplifying our game and getting back to our non-negotiables and what we're about, what's brought us success. And I think we can all see that. So that's why I think there's actually a good vibe around. Even all right, we lost the game the other night, we shouldn't have. Let's go and try and take this form into tomorrow's game. That was when previously when we've had success in this league, consistency was what we had. And, I think we found a level now. We found our level over the last two games, and it's important now that we maintain that. There's an energy around today. There was a vibe around the training. Do you know what? And I know I've spoken to you guys about it. They're always great, the boys. But there has been a difference over these last couple of weeks, which is really encouraging. We treat this game exactly as we treated Watford, Sunderland, and it will be just as difficult because every game in the Championship is, and away from home, it is. It means a lot to both teams. So, like I said, they've got a brilliant manager, and clearly loads of talented players, and we've just got to make sure that we concentrate on ourselves, and their fortunes don't change tomorrow. Walshy can come back into it, and a few others we're really hoping for Friday, but nothing to add. But the good thing is no one's come out of whatever it was Wednesday's game either.
Yep, so that's what Rob says. We have absolutely no idea what it was, but I'm sure it made absolute perfect sense. And we hope it's somewhere along the lines of everyone is good to go who went on Wednesday. And if we got some bonus features alongside it, happy days.
Yeah, and whatever he said, you can read on Lutonian.com. But obviously, we're recording this on the Thursday, and that happened in the future on Friday. But by the magic of television and editing, we can bring you it.
Perfect. That's almost it for this episode of the podcast. There's just one thing left to do, and that is the score predictions. As you're ahead, Jimbo, Coventry versus Luton. How does it finish?
I'd love to say on penalties and going to the Premier League again, but it seems that's not an option. But I'm really quite a lot more confident about this one than was the previous one, which was a pragmatic choice. I didn't like making it pragmatic, but I think this one is a 2-1 all day long.
2-1 Luton. I presume 2-1 Luton.
To Luton, yeah.
Yeah, 2-1 to Luton. No, that's good. Yeah, no, this ain't the JPT. We ain't going straight to penalties afterwards. You're right, it is a shame. Although having said that, the way our goalkeeper is with saving penalties, we might still be there until next Friday, waiting for someone to miss, unless Darbo comes along again. You never know, do you? Yeah, I think Luton win this game as well. These 12:30 games, the one thing I've noticed in this division, unless Plymouth turn up, the one thing I've noticed in the division, they're bloody low scoring. I mean, obviously, the ones before the Watford game that we were involved with, 0-0 at Portsmouth, 1-0 at Millwall, a lot of them seem to be low scoring. Can Luton keep a clean sheet? I hope so. I'll go 1-0 Luton here. I think that day that you got absolutely soaked was 1-0 Luton, wasn't it, when Collins scored?
Don't know, mate. It was far too bloody cold.
Yeah, well, you probably was, yeah. And we won 1-0 there where Alex Palmer was on loan as an emergency loan as well. So 1-0 there is not a regular scoreline, but it's a scoreline that's come before. And it can come again. I never thought I would be putting Luton to keep a clean sheet within a week of that Sheffield United debacle, but there you go.
Well, that's the difference a week makes, isn't it?
I think it's a different Tom Holmes makes, you know.
Well, yeah, Tom Holmes. McGuinness has found his self. Has found what he was signed for, I guess. He looks a lot more assured.
Can we send all of our players to Ireland and back in the space of a week if that's the impact that it has on them?
Hey, man, this is Luton. There's a big Irish community. I'm sure somebody can be...
He doesn't sound very Irish.
Somebody could be related to somebody, or somebody's had a weekend trip to Tipperary or something along the line. Somebody's had a pint of Guinness here or there. Get them all done there.
Guinness.
It didn't stop Tony Cascarino, did it?
Well, it didn't. And no, it didn't. Absolutely right. And for the record, for the balance of power, Jacob Brown doesn't sound very Scottish either. But as we saw when we had him on the podcast last season, he's got a relative from Scotland, which I'm sure is how McGuinness got to the Ireland squad. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a lot more confident now. Obviously, Kaminsky will be hard work. I just don't see a high-scoring game here. I don't see a high-scoring game anywhere in the country, really, because the schedule's just bonkers. Everyone's running on fumes now. So I'll go 1-0 if you're going 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bold choice, but I think it's doable with what we've seen last week. So, yeah, I just think, we don't make it easy all the time, but 2-1, that's for me.
Yeah, I'll be happy to be wrong as long as Luton score more than one. Not a problem whatsoever. And let's have your correct scores. Of course, there isn't an awful lot of time to get the correct scores into us, but those that are, any that are right, we will flag up and shout out in the review podcast, which thankfully is back to the normal time next week because we've got midweek off next week. Hooray! Can't come soon enough, I'm sure, for the players as much as us too. Thanks very much for watching or listening, however it is that you've consumed this podcast. Do keep subscribing though, because we have got another midweek game the week after next, and these podcasts are going to come thick and fast at you. We were asked in amongst the comments for the Sunderland preview what happened to our deep dive on Power Court. It is still on the horizon. These games need to slow down a wee bit, but we'll get someone from inside the camp to talk us through all of the new changes and everything else with that. We're just trying to finalise a date. It'll probably be the next international break at the earliest.
And make sure some diaries match up, which was part of the problem last time. But
yeah, personal issues came along, and it didn't work, but it will definitely happen, and we'll let you know when it's coming out. Thanks to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio. We really do appreciate your support, guys, especially as we've been in here more than you over the last week or so. To Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music. To Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. If you want immediate post-match reaction before we record the podcast to review the game, head to the Lutonian.com. Jimbo will have all of that. But from James and myself, until next time, which will be a review of what we hope will be another glorious day against Coventry. Come on, you Hatters, we can do this.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.